as we've been reporting, Syria's interim president here in Paris today for that meeting with Emmanuel Macron, a crucial opportunity for him to make a push to get EU sanctions lifted. Yuka Royer from the business desk is here with more on how the last 14 years of civil war really have battered the Syrian economy.
Well, with more than 730,000 people dead or missing, the war really dealt a heavy toll on the nation and left its economy in tatters. Annual GDP shrank by a staggering 85% between 2011 and 2024 to just $9 billion, according to World Bank estimates, putting the economy on par with the likes of Chad and the Palestinian territories. 90% of the population lives in poverty, with 3 out of 4 people dependent on humanitarian aid. 5.7 million people are in need of shelter, with most houses destroyed. Energy production has fallen by 80%. The European Union in February suspended some of the sanctions it had imposed against the Assad regime, notably on energy and transport, and loosened restrictions on financial transactions. But the impact has been limited. At a joint press conference with Emmanuel Macron today, the new Syrian leader said there was no justification for maintaining those sanctions, and the French president said he'd push for the EU not to renew them in June.
Moving on to the US, Yuka, the Federal Reserve deciding to keep interest rates unchanged despite pressure coming from Donald Trump.
Well, Fed Chairman Jerome Powell has come under repeated attacks from the US president, who called him Mr. Too Late and urged him to bring down borrowing costs quickly. But as widely expected, the Federal Reserve's policymakers on Wednesday unanimously decided to keep its benchmark interest rate unchanged in the current 4.25% to 4.5% range. While stating that the US economy overall had continued to expand at a solid pace, Chairman Powell warned that the risks of higher inflation and higher unemployment were both on the rise, and that if Donald Trump's high tariffs stayed for a long time, they could pose a challenge to the Fed's job of ensuring price stability and a healthy job market. He also, though, ruled out cutting interest rates preemptively to cushion the impact of those tariffs. Let's take a listen.
If the large increases in tariffs that have been announced are sustained, they're likely to generate a rise in inflation, a slowdown in economic growth, and an increase in unemployment. For the time being, we're well positioned to wait for greater clarity before considering any adjustments to our policy stance.
Meanwhile, the US and China, they're finally set to sit down for high-level trade talks, Yuka.
Finally, US Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent and Trade Representative Jamieson Greer will be speaking with Chinese Vice Premier Li Yifeng starting on Saturday in Geneva, where the World Trade Organization is headquartered. A major breakthrough is unlikely, but it will be a first step in trying to de-escalate their trade war. US tariffs on Chinese goods have risen to 145%, with Beijing retaliating with a 125% duty on American products. Beijing maintains it's up to Washington to pull back from its unilateral tariffs.
This meeting comes at the request of the United States. China firmly opposes the indiscriminate imposition of tariffs by the U.S. side, and this position has not changed. In the meantime, as we have repeatedly stated, China maintains an open attitude towards dialogue, but any dialogue should be based on equality, respect, and reciprocity.
Well, responding to those comments, Donald Trump said he won't back down, but he also suggested he wasn't considering making too many sector or product-specific exemptions at a swearing-in ceremony for his new ambassador to China.
China says in order to have substantive negotiations, you have to bring down your 145% tariffs. Are you open to pulling back your tariffs in order to get China to the negotiating table?
No.
That's Donald Trump saying no there, clearly. Wall Street stocks rose despite a lack of clarity about tariffs from the Trump administration on reports that it might ease existing curbs on the export of AI chips. The Dow Jones ended the day up over 280 points, and the Nasdaq reversed an earlier decline to rise 0.3%, Sharon.
Finally, in business news, Yuka, there is going to be another Disneyland, this time in the Middle East.
Yeah, this will be Walt Disney's 7th theme park around the world and the first in the Middle East. It will be built on Abu Dhabi's Yas Island in collaboration with local developer Miro Group. The UAE company will finance, build and operate the resort, while Disney will take charge of the creative side. No opening date has been announced, but it could take several years before it can open. Disney has struggled with falling stock prices, subscriber losses for its streaming service, and declining park attendance in the United States, leading to a failed boardroom coup last year. And that's it for business.
Yuka, thanks so much for all of that. Yuka Roy there with the day's business news. Up next, it's time